For decades, Alabama's public schools struggled with a familiar reputation, chronically underfunded and consistently ranked near the bottom nationally. Look at this dashboard of recent state data. Graduation rates have crossed the 90% threshold, reading and math scores show clear upward movement on national assessments, and lawmakers have injected a record $9.3 billion into the state education budget. Yet, talk to the educators working inside these buildings during the 2025-2026 school year, and you hear a distinct sense of exhaustion. Staffing shortages persist, student needs are broader than ever, and local resources are stretched to their limits. This friction between high-level progress and on-the-ground strain is happening because the state is attempting something highly ambitious. Alabama is pulling three massive policy levers simultaneously, overhauling its entire educational infrastructure all at once. This makes 2026 a live-fire experiment. The state is testing whether public schools can absorb top-down mandates in early literacy, a complete restructuring of public funding, and a rapid expansion of private school choice without buckling under the pressure. The first major lever is the Alabama Literacy Act. It hinges on a specific mandate. If students aren't reading proficiently by the end of third grade, they are held back. This diagram shows a typical elementary student's daily schedule. To meet that standard, schools have to completely rewire how they operate. Notice how blocks for core reading and explicit phonics intervention dominate the timeline, requiring tightly coordinated efforts. But adding these reading minutes requires a direct trade-off. Expanding literacy instruction inevitably squeezes the clock, leaving fewer minutes for science, social studies, and the arts. Beyond the schedule changes, this intense focus generates a massive amount of new paperwork. Teachers are now required to conduct constant progress monitoring and heavy data documentation, adding a hefty administrative burden to an already demanding job. So while this rigorous approach to foundational skills is pushing test scores upward, it does so by cannibalizing the flexibility and time of the broader elementary curriculum. The second major lever hitting classrooms is the CHOOSE Act. Passed in 2024 and fully active for the 2025-2026 school year, this law creates education savings accounts funded by refundable tax credits. The policy is designed to give families the financial flexibility to take their public education dollars and spend them on approved private school tuition, tutoring, or therapies, matching a child's specific needs with a custom educational environment. However, critics point out a clear risk. Funneling state money into the private sector could drain critical resources from public districts, leaving them with less funding while they continue to serve the highest need student populations. This flowchart breaks down the early CHOOSE Act applicant data. A significant portion of the families applying for these funds were not leaving the public school system at all. They were already enrolled in private schools or homeschooling. This creates profound unpredictability. As districts need consistent funding to execute strict literacy mandates, the introduction of ESAs injects deep volatility into future enrollment and budget projections. To stabilize the system, Alabama lawmakers have passed recurring pay raises and advanced new formulas like the RAISE Act. These proposals aim to distribute that $9.3 billion budget based on specific student needs, like poverty and special education, rather than just raw headcounts. This chart illustrates the human capital wall. A sharply rising state budget does not magically conjure specialized math, science, and special education teachers out of thin air, especially in rural areas struggling to attract talent. The job itself has become incredibly complex. Teachers are managing severe behavioral challenges, learning gaps across multiple grade levels, and heightened mental health needs. Pay raises are helpful, but compensation alone cannot offset difficult daily working conditions. Finally, a quiet constraint undermines everything: chronic student absenteeism. Even the best instructional plans fail if students aren't present. Top-down funding increases and meticulously structured literacy interventions mean very little if schools cannot staff their classrooms and students do not show up to receive the instruction. Because of these compounding factors, there won't be a single, uniform outcome for this experiment. District capacity varies wildly across Alabama's geography. An urban or suburban district often has the built-in advantages of strong local tax bases, robust community partnerships, and a larger pool of teaching applicants to draw from. Compare that to a rural district. In these communities, school choice programs often exist strictly on paper, severely limited by vast transportation distances and a total lack of alternative private providers. Sweeping legislation can set a new direction and mandate higher expectations, but ultimately it is the administrative capacity of local principals and superintendents that will actually dictate the results on the ground. 2026 is Alabama's ultimate pivot year. How the state manages the friction between intense literacy mandates, an expanding school choice market, and exhausted educators will determine if this massive systemic reboot becomes a durable blueprint for national reform or fractures under its own weight.